Hello and welcome to India Autism Center's webinar on connection and communication through movements in persons with autism. This webinar has been brought to you by Dr. Aditi Bandopadhyay and India Autism Center. Dr. Aditi Bandopadhyay is a physician of medicine by profession, a medical faculty with her parallel interest and identity as an Indian classical Odissi dancer and as a dance and movement therapy practitioner. She had training in intervention and management of autism initially at Thompson Center for Autism in Columbia, Missouri, USA, and has also pursued an academic program on public health at the University of Missouri, USA. Since then, and even after returning to India, Dr. Aditi has been actively involved as an advocate for rights of persons with autism and other neurodevelopmental delays. Dr. Aditi is presently a clinical faculty of West Bengal University of Health Sciences and is an MD in medical physiology. Dr. Aditi is the founder of Samia Foundation for Special Needs, catering to various needs of people with multiple disabilities. Samia Foundation is focusing on facilitated clinical services for people with special needs. Presently, she is working with more than 150 children through this model of dance and movement therapy. She also trains parents at Samia as a free community services regarding various interventions and management skills about raising children with disabilities. I am Srirupa Chakravarti, Assistant Manager at India Autism Center, a first of its kind integrative community project coming up in Bengal. You can now know more about it by clicking on the links in the chat box or following our social media pages. We'll begin this discussion in just a minute, but before that, we would like to address the growing privacy concerns about using Zoom for a collaborative platform. Please be rest assured that we are taking all the safety steps suggested by the support team to ensure no privacy and security breach. All our meetings and webinars so far have been hosted safely, and we will only take stricter measures from here on, like pre-registrations, waiting rooms, and locking the meeting room 15 minutes into the meeting. We thank you all for cooperating with us. Before we begin the webinar, know that we will be fielding questions today at the end of the session, and you can address them to me by clicking on India Autism Center on the chat box below. However, you can ask them anytime during the session using the chat box. If you have questions for India Autism Center, you can address them to us by clicking on India Autism Center on the chat box below. An e-certificate of attendance will be sent to you within 4 working days from the webinar. If you have queries about not receiving e-certificates from the previous webinar, then write to us on info@indiaautismcenter.org or leave a WhatsApp message to 905 111 0656. These queries and concerns need to be taken up within 48 hours from the webinar. It is also mandatory that you fill the form within 48 hours. We'll be circulating the link soon, and I suggest you save it and fill it out after the webinar is over. If this form is not filled within 48 hours, we will not be able to give you an e-certificate of attendance. After filling out the form, you will be receiving the e-certificate after 4 days from the date of the webinar. I'll be locking the meeting in the next 10 minutes. I would also be circulating social media handles of the Samia Foundation in the chat box and would request all of you to follow the pages. I would now request Dr. Aditi to please take it forward from here.
Thank you, Srirupa. Namaskar. Hello, I'm Dr. Aditi Bandopadhyay, and I thank India Autism Center for organizing such wonderful interactive webinars, especially during this crisis period going around the world. And such interactive webinars are really very helpful regarding empowering people, mostly the special needs community and the autistic individuals who are doing, I would say all autistic individuals that I know of, all our children, all our adults are doing very well in this lockdown period when people, the so-called neurotypicals, are having a hard time to stay at home. The more I get to see our people, the more I get to know about our people, they are adjusting very well to the situation. So thank you, ISC, for this wonderful initiative. So I think we can start right now, Srirupa, with my presentation.
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. So today my topic of discussion is movements to build up connection and communication. As most of you know that I have been working through the medium of dance and movement therapy for quite some time now, more than 5 years, and I have been studying the different movement techniques which we have been applying on individuals with autism and other groups of developmental challenges. Movements we have found play a great role in building up connection. And when we get connected to our surroundings, be it human beings around us, be it animals around us, be it even mere objects around us, we tend to develop our communication. So that is going to be the focus of our discussion primarily today. So in this connection, I will share a presentation with you all now. Is my screen visible? The presentation visible? Okay. Thank you. So now, as I start, I would very quickly go over the definition of dance and movement therapy as given by American Dance Therapy Association. I suppose that today we have an audience which comprises of the medical community, of therapists, as parents, as parent professionals, and also a group of dance and movement therapy practitioners who would know that according to ADTA, it says that dance and movement therapy is the psychotherapeutic use of movements to promote emotional, social, cognitive, and physical integration of the individual, as mentioned here. But what I would like to say is it first starts, as a physiologist, I would say it first starts with the physical integration of the individual. Why physical integration of the individual? Because as I said, movements are a very, very physical thing. And through movements, we connect with different objects in our surrounding. That I'm seated in front of you, in front of a laptop. I cannot see any one of you at the moment, but you all can see me. So I have an understanding where to place myself in front of the camera of this laptop so that I'm visible to you all, how to hold this microphone so that I'm audible to you all. So what am I doing at the moment? At the moment, I am physically integrating my body, not with human beings or people around me, but with certain machines around me which seem to be inanimate objects. More or less, what I'm connecting also emotionally, because today I know the group of audience that will be there. So when I'm connecting with you emotionally, what are your expectations out of this discussion today? What we are going to discuss, the challenges, the problems, and how they can be dealt with corrective movements. So definitely at certain point I'm connecting with you emotionally, and of course I'm very happy that in this period of lockdown I'm being able to connect with people I cannot see, but I know that people are hearing me and they will be there with their questions and I will be able to interact with them. Who brings about this connection? My brain. And thus is the cognitive integration established. So is cognitive integration a different from that of physical integration? No. And finally, what it sums up to be is the social integration. So I'm socially connecting with you people. There lies the problem, because we always say that people with autism, they lack social communication skills. Why would they lack social communication skills? Because these areas, the faculties of thought processes, the faculty of planning, is a challenge for them. How is it a challenge for them? So it is not that their social communication is impaired just because they lack the social skills. The social skills, they emanate from these kinds of challenges which are not properly integrated in them, like you and me. Although I have quite a bit of doubt about which if we are also correctly integrated in certain things. But as a dance movement therapy practitioner, I have been widely using the Laban technique, the Laban movement analysis technique, where the two principles I have been following were these first 2 points. Number one, initiation of movement starting from specific bodies, and next is sequencing of movement between different parts of the body. Here I am. If I'm going to right now stand up from the chair that I'm sitting, I would like to take a certain posture. When I take that certain posture, it also depends upon the material with which this chair is built. If it is a wooden chair, I would have to take a posture which would help me to push it back a little further, and then I would raise. If it was a plastic chair, my movement would have been aligned in such a way that the chair doesn't fall off. Now imagine a person with autism many a times, not all again, many a times would have a hard time even from regarding getting up from a chair, moving to the table, getting a piece of block or a glass of water from the table and coming back and sitting back on the same chair without looking back at the chair, because this person lacks connection of different objects in his or her surrounding the way you and me are doing it. So Laban movement analysis, which has its widespread application in different sports medicine practices and elsewhere also, has been widely used in dance and movement therapy, and I have been widely using it in my practice. Again, as I always say, that if you are going to use dance and movement therapy as an intervention, like any therapy or any intervention, you have to have a proper goal oriented approach, because recently there is a trend that people would play some music, someone would dance swing, and then we would say, oh, I did some dance therapy, I did some music therapy, I sang a song to a person having autism, and I did music therapy because the person felt good. No, a person with autism is perfectly capable of enjoying and appreciating dance and music. But that doesn't give me a chance to say that I have been applying dance and movement therapy. Because, like any therapeutic procedure, definitely has to have a certain goal oriented process. It has to have a certain skill based process. We need to have that skill to work it out, and it is not at all a performance based skill, it is rather a process of facilitation. And the other place that I am very closely associated with, from which I took my training and certification in dance and movement therapy, which is under the Tata Institute of Social Sciences and Kolkata Sanveer, they are also great believers in this philosophy. And my practice is again very, very specific to developmental challenges, mostly autism. So in this slide, here we see there are two columns. And those who have attended, among you have attended my workshop or seminar before, you have perhaps seen this slide before, where I always speak about the differences in the application of dance and movement therapy in regular neurotypical children as well as children or adults having developmental delays. More or less, the goals and the objectives are quite similar, except for the two underlined points we see in the right sided column that we follow for persons with autism or other neurodevelopmental delays. One of which I have already spoken to you: orientation and coordination with other objects and bodies in the environment. Now, I am naturally a dancer, so I move a lot while I talk. I move my hands a lot when I talk, and at times I have to really make a very conscious effort to stay still and stiff while I talk. But still, again, there is certain cognitive process, a cognitive integration working, that I know that I do not hit these flowers behind me so that it falls off. So that is what is about orientation and coordination with other objects and bodies in the environment. When I want to go and meet someone in person, I should be knowing how much physical distance I should be maintaining with that person, based upon, again, my relationship with the person and how I'm going to approach the person. But these come across as big, big challenges for persons having autism or even other neurodevelopmental delays. Secondly, research has proved synchronized rhythmic movements help in developing the higher cognitive functions of the brain. Thus, we start with rhythmic movements. Not only in movement therapy, we started from our very early beginning. Have we ever seen little children dance to any tune which does not have any rhythm? No, they don't. Because that is a process through which we all grow up with. So, here I have just listed the challenges that have mostly been worked upon with dance and movement therapy, and me myself have worked upon these groups of challenges, mostly people with autism, then Down syndrome, cerebral palsy, learning disability, and other groups that I have mentioned. But today, I will keep this discussion mostly restricted and limited to the scope of movements and their application in persons with autism. Now, coming to autism. Autism is something which today I assume that most of the audience here are very, very much well aware about, they are acquainted with, and many perhaps, like me even, are living a life with a person having autism. It's a big revelation of life to live a life with a person having autism, as a parent, as a sibling, as even a partner. So we know that autism is a neurobiological disorder, and autism has its earliest manifestations maybe much earlier than the second year of life, but it is most prevalent in the second and third years of life, when parents come to a developmental pediatrician or a psychologist or a general physician or a school teacher, even to the nearest relatives, seeking this question: when is my child going to talk? Because they see that my child is not talking at par with peers of his or her same age group. Now, there lies the problem, because autism is an invisible disability. It does not show up on the face that this child has got autism. But definitely, the very significant traits of autism are noticeable from that age, which makes parents very much concerned. And the primary thing that the mother should do is, if you are a mother and you have a gut feeling that yes, something is wrong with my child, you need to seek help. You need to approach the proper interventions to work with your child, and cannot lose a moment, no matter how the relatives in the surrounding keep saying, oh, this child is a bit restless, it's okay, people are late talkers. No, you cannot wait. So because autism is an invisible disability, we will quickly go over certain notable features of the autism spectrum disorder. Here, this among the certain notable features, we have already discussed about delayed speech, number one. Number two, hyperactive behavior. But again, some of them may present with too much slowness of behavior, lethargy. So it also depends, because autism is what? Autism spectrum disorder. What is a spectrum? A constellation of associated traits or related signs and symptoms. So if someone might be very hyperactive, someone might not be that hyperactive but inattentive, again someone might be quite slow in the movements, listless, or maybe not at all connected with the surroundings. So it is an entire spectrum. And autism spectrum disorder, since it spans over severe, moderate, and mild according to DSM 5, because nowadays, according to Diagnostic and Statistical Manual 5, the terms like Asperger's syndrome, etc., are not used. But again, we know that certain countries are still following it. But since in India we follow mostly DSM 5, so we divide it as severe, moderate, and mild autism. But then again, this is not the only spectrum, I would say, that only exists in autism. Because if you have seen one person with autism, you have seen only one person with autism, and in that person itself there can be different ranges of this spectrum. This person can be very sensitive to sound, but this same person can again have certain features which are not that severe as compared to someone else. So the terms which people mostly prefer to say high functioning autism, classical autism, I am not a great believer in that, because people with high functioning autism can have significant challenges too. Just because they talk, they don't have challenges, it's not true. They can have significant communication challenges, severe anxiety, which at times make them perform way less than what their potential seems to be. So the spectrum again exists as a spectrum in every person with autism. Difficulty in social communication, as we know that people with autism have poor eye contact, poor attention span, and inclination towards rotating objects, fan, moving moving to wheels of cars. And then again, they also resort to uh, self stimulation by visual stimming, hand flapping, rocking, head banging, etc. So, what I say is the core deficit areas are what we see as the tips of the iceberg. They can range from verbal to non-verbal. They can be quite aloof, or very active. They can be very rigid, following a certain route to the school every day, and a change makes them very disturbed. But they can be too flexible also. Do you want to eat? Yes. Yes. Are you hungry? No, you're not hungry. No. They don't know. They don't know what is the difference between yes and no. Many a times. Again, not again all of them. But that is what makes us misunderstand autism. And that is why an IQ test is not a right marker of autism, because they can have measured IQ, which range can make them gifted individuals. But I have also come across gifted individuals who are not toilet trained enough, even at the age of 15 or 16 years of age. I have come across people having wonderful skills with beading, with making jewelries, a lot of things, but they are very poor in certain functioning, like they cannot even apply adequate pressure to open the lock of a door. So again, regarding sensory issues, and I believe there are many occupational therapists today in the audience also, they would say that there is a wide range from being hypersensitive to hyposensitive in certain areas. Now, here we see an overall section of the brain, where the sagittal section of the brain cut this way. If the brain is cut this way, we would see one side of it. From, if we take it into two halves, so I'm taking this half out and visualizing it from this side. That means if this half was not there, how it would be looking like from this side. So that is where we see the parts of the brain affected by autism and other groups of developmental disabilities. Here we see that almost the entire brain is widely affected. In a nutshell, cerebral cortex is responsible for higher intellectual functioning as well as deciding simple actions in response to certain stimulus. I get hurt. I touch a mug of coffee and I feel it's very heated. So the moment I have to withdraw my hand, who is planning it? The temperature receptors present on my skin are taking the information via the spinal cord to the brain, sensing it. The cerebral cortex is processing information, sending it back through my spinal cord to the nerves, and the nerves are giving information to the muscles to pull back my hand. Then again, we see this zone is very important in autism, the temporal lobe, because here we see there are certain structures like the amygdala, the hippocampus. Hippocampus is responsible for memory, consolidation, and other functions like we know people with autism, they have very profound photographic memory. So they remember a lot of things from the past, date wise, year wise, connection wise. They see red, and with red they will connect so many events of the past. No matter, they won't be able to tell you what did you have for lunch today. So these are the areas where there are a lot of wiring issues. Autism is known as an overall wiring problem of the brain till date, based upon the research that has been done so far. Amygdala responsible for the emotional responses. So we see many of our persons with autism all of a sudden would start laughing. And we don't know even if the person is too upset, too tired, but still laughing. Why? Many a times we see, oh, that's turned into a behavior. Parents would say that's a problem behavior. Maybe not. We don't know. The appropriate response is not being processed by my brain. When I want to feel upset and tired and maybe probably shed a drop of tear, I am compelled to laugh. Again, we see that there are issues with different movement centers, which we are going to talk about, mostly the basal ganglia and the cerebellum. And they again, in our next slide, we are going to talk about how the neural circuitry, because we know that the brain is the head office of our entire body, which processes information, stores information, executes our actions. And here, the neural circuits, the nerves are arranged in such a way that if they are not functioning properly, our body will never function appropriately. Now, for example, in the simplest way, suppose the connection of the switch to the fan of my room gets connected to the light of my room. So every time I switch it on, instead of the switch of the fan switching on the fan, it switches on the light. Every time I feel tired and want to cry, I start laughing, just like that. And the proposed hypothesis have said that somewhere this neural circuit gets disconnected. Thus, it is known as a disconnectivity disorder. I'm afraid I cannot go into the very details of neurophysiology today because we have got to talk a lot about movement related issues and how we can work on the movement, especially during this time. So here, when our movements are restricted, not to move out of our house. So here we see this in our slide. This diagram is a little more in a bigger way in the next slide. It's a complex circuit that controls our movements. It's a bit not very clear here. This is the basal ganglia and this is the cerebellum. So I'm again very much simplifying it for you. Suppose I come across at the doorstep, there is an elevation and I need to step over the elevation in order to cross that and pass across the doorway. So who is going to look after that? The cerebellum. It says, okay, this much is the height. You take your limb up to that level, cross it further, take the other limb up and cross it again and move away. But in the process of doing that, somehow I trip over it and I tend to fall. The basal ganglia immediately corrects me saying, oh, don't fall. Either it corrects my posture or it aligns my body in such a way, and the motor cortex immediately corrects and gives an information, hold the sides of the door and stop yourself. Many a times we will see our people, persons with autism, they have huge issues doing it. Maybe they have experienced it many a times. Any breakage in the line of walking, any doorstep would suddenly make them stop. Then they would very cautiously figure out how to balance, how to manage it, and then cross it. This person may be running in the field so fast that no one can beat him or her. But this very person, while walking in a room filled up with furniture, might have a lot of coordination issues, in coordination, and not be able to maneuver or navigate the body through those array of furniture set across the room. So here we see the research insights have shown why does this happen. These are some of them, not all of them. On the right side, this has been taken by me from one of the TED Talks by Dr. Temple Grandin. I know Dr. Temple Grandin is also one of the great persons who has been appreciating the work of India Autism Center. And I had the rare opportunity of meeting her way back in 2011 at Thompson Center for Autism in Missouri, in Columbia, Missouri. So this one where she had herself volunteered for a tractography, that is tracking the pathway of nerves in her brain from what we say as the visual cortex, from the backside of the brain to the front, processing information of what we are seeing and as of what actions we are taking based upon that. It is perhaps a little difficult to understand if you are not having a background of neurology, but we will come to the easier parts. But this is very interesting because here the lines which are marked in red, as you see on the right side, the lines which are marked in red are those of Dr. Temple Grandin's, and that which is in blue are that of a regular person. So can we see that the red lines are longer as compared to the blue lines? So why does that happen? Because it is said that cerebral pruning, or again loss of certain nerve fibers, take place automatically, which one of the theories says does not take place in autism. Some of the theory says that there is increased brain mass in autism due to increase in the white matter content, which causes a neural noise. An autistic brain is always a brain which is filled up with loads of information. Thus, auditory screening is very difficult. The fan is on, I am talking, music is on, vehicles on the street. To me, I know which one to prioritize. Probably you also know right now, though it is a lockdown period, so there are not much of associated sounds nearby. But still, people who are listening to me at the moment, they know whom to listen to or focus on at this time. But for them, that becomes a big problem. Thus, contrary to a common belief that if there are loads of nerve fibers which are involved in processing information in an autism, it may not be so. Rather, it can lead to lots of aberrations. So why am I speaking such things today? Because all this chaotic situation in the brain at times hinders and also inhibits this person to open up spontaneously with the spontaneous range of movements. So this person appears to be clumsy, awkward, withdrawn, and at times too aggressive as well, when in reality, the person may not be anything of that. So, again, a few words about basic science, because science has proved dance is essentially a pleasure double play. It stimulates the reward centers of our brain, which makes us do it again and again. Dance is one of the physical and expressive exercises which strengthens our memory. And if we also associate our movements with the words that we speak, like two little hands go clap, 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 that's the way we have learned. Two little feet go stamp, 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 or twinkle, twinkle, little star, up above the world so high, like a diamond in the sky. Many of the parents who have lived with children with autism, perhaps we have never seen that in our lifetime. We get such pleasure when we see little kids doing it, right? But again, the persons who are not able to associate these feelings with the movements, where would they be? It comes naturally. And that's why we fail to realize that it is a blessing when a child can naturally do it. So, up is this, down is this, twinkling is this, maybe a diamond, maybe a star. It takes a lot of effort to apply this or teach this to a person with autism. Through movements, we can make them work, because 90% of our communication is non-verbal communication. Again, we have seen movements facilitate and stimulate the memory centers of our brain. It also, the fourth point, music has its effect on neurogenesis. Sprouts of nerves come up. It has been shown by fMRI studies and functional MRI studies. I talked about it a little late. I had shown it in the slide, didn't talk about it, where it is an imaging of the brain which shows that yes, we can detect the responses of different parts of the brain based upon the stimulus given. And also, number 5, theory of neuroplasticity, that is, the brain remodels itself based upon repetitive exercise. Any therapy is actually a repetitive corrective measure by which we want to achieve what we want. Practice makes someone perfect. It also applies to us. Nothing only very specific to autism, but for them, we make them do what we want them to do. So here are some evidence-based studies. If you want later on, I can give you the links to them. In our DMT program, the Samya DMT program, we have so far been working with, right now at the moment, we have 151 participants, among which 131 of them have autism, and the other groups are also given over here. Now, how do we make movement work? This is a very important thing. We all know, again, we say that what is autism? We also debate a lot upon it, that okay, we won't call autism a disability, it is a condition that someone is born with. A person is autistic by birth, everything is fine. But I am not a great believer of terminologies, and yes, I prefer calling an autistic individual as an autistic individual, not a person living with autism, a person with autism, because autism characterizes that person and there is nothing wrong about it. But what we say, it's a social communication disorder. We live in different social situations, right? So we know how to behave in a birthday party, how to behave in a funeral, how to attend a rally, how to attend a school assembly. These are all situations where there will be a crowd, but we do not know how to behave differently in each of these situations where there will be a crowd, where there is a classroom or where there's a birthday party. And once a person with autism has registered it into his or her memory that here there are so many people over here, and okay, here I'm going to get a piece of birthday cake, there is going to be good food. Now next time the same person goes to a funeral with a parent and sees a crowd, and maybe sometimes in the same venue also, would go on seeking for the food, because the person has already registered it in the brain that I'm going to get food over here. But these are two different social situations. So how do we make them understand and how to behave in different social situations, how to follow, whom to follow in a classroom? There are special people in the classroom attended by shadow teachers, parents acting as shadows, right? So many a times they also forget to focus their attention as of whom am I focusing. Am I focusing my attention on the class teacher or the friend sitting next to me or someone sitting back and giving me instructions? It's very difficult for them to follow. So again, the movement therapy program that we have, I am very strict about it. It's a parent facilitated program. Parents are allowed and asked to participate, encouraged to participate. But I tell them strictly that you cannot talk. You cannot prompt. A shadow is a shadow. A shadow doesn't speak, because they need to figure out whom to follow. If I am the instructor, they have to follow me. And moreover, they have to do that auditory screening, prioritize over my voice based instructions over the music that is being played, over the sound that is in the surrounding, over friends who are maybe at that time screaming, or at that time they are talking loudly. And that makes a person very confused with autism. So the best thing they would do is shut off their ears and be by themselves, because that is a coping mechanism. How to focus on non-verbal communication. Why this is a challenge? Because there is, first of all, poor eye contact, lack of communication skills, they are listed there, lack of observational skills. So if someone is not establishing eye contact, I am not questioning any other method of intervention. But if someone is having difficulty in establishing eye contact all the time, fixing the head, তাকিয়ে কথা বলো, look, देखो, आंख में देखो, look into the eyes and talk, is not going to help, because I am taking out, I am not allowing that person to follow the spontaneous movement of the person. The movement that I want to achieve is definitely inherent somewhere in this person, but not at the cost of making this person forcibly get into that action. If the child is looking through peripheral vision, that's all right. We have to gradually get into the world of this child, facilitate the child, and then bring about these corrective movements. How does a child understand up? How does a child understand stand up, sit down, wait? We are very familiar with the wait card. Many of us use that when we use we use visual schedule, the teach methodology of structured teaching. We write down wait and we give this shape of hand. From there, we should gradually come to a transition to this weight. That is our objective, right? That is our goal that we finally want to transition to. So that is again understanding gestures. I have seen children have a lot of issues understanding this body language, the different gestures, and following. These are all the basics of non-verbal communication. Other problems that they have. Look at these two sketches. One is a sketch, one is a painting by a child. These are the artworks which has been widely appreciated. But at the same time, this same child, when asked to draw a diagram in school, the diagram came across like this. The disparity between these two and this one. Why so? Where does the problem lie? Many have told me that there is difficulty in executing, there is difficulty in drawing a straight line, difficulty in connecting the root with the stem, difficulty in connecting the leaves with the stem. But a person, a self advocate with autism, had once told me, "You do not know the way we perceive. I look at the trees in this way. The leaves, the flowers, the fruits, they are all disconnected to me. They oscillate to me, oscillate before me. And that is the way when I see them, it looks like this." So then again, if someone is perceiving it differently and then executing it honestly, then how can we question that this person has a problem or has a behavior or has significant issues for which they this person is not being able, this person has apraxia. Maybe the person has it, but maybe this person also is perceiving it differently. Here we see regarding eye contact, there are different theories. Very common eye contact that we see in this girl, and this beautiful girl on the left side, the way she is looking. Many of our children would tend to look like this with corner vision, or they would at times press against the or pull the corner of this eye to get a view of double vision, which helps in a kind of visual stimulation. Or else they would like to hear this way. We do not know if they are aligning their head accordingly to get a better auditory processing, to hear it better. Also, we do not know, because they mostly lack face-to-face communication. They can have problem with localization of sound, and many a times they fail to understand the correct meaning of the sound, or even if they are understanding the meaning of the sound, they mostly have difficulty in executing it, or they may be completely non-verbal but comprehending it well, processing the information well, and executing it also well, but still there is no eye contact. Through movements, through facilitated movements, through mirroring their own movements, many a times we are successful in building up eye contact. Here we see on the right side another very bright child who, though not always establishes eye contact, here we see him just opposite to the facilitator. And what we do is we encourage a lot of spontaneous movement in the child. Probably the child is flapping hands all the time. I have provided certain links. If you see one of the links that has the link to our annual concert, you will see what we call as free dance. And there all the parents are mirroring the movements made by the children. Gradually we have seen that if someone, probably a child, is clapping hands in front of me and I am also doing the same, to the child it comes across as respecting that movement of the child. Gradually, even if the child makes a momentary eye contact, I start swinging with the child, and the child many times starts swinging. So we are connecting. Then after connecting, maybe we are holding hands and moving together. And after moving together, I initiate a response and I move my hands out and closer. And the child somehow wants to do that. The child probably cannot do those alternate movements and would like to hold my hand and do it. And gradually, through these movements, we are establishing a communication. So we are connecting and then we are communicating between each other without any spoken words. Here also, this goes a long way in social understanding, because what we started with, autism is a social communication disorder, right? So here we see that the ability to read and interpret someone else's feelings, thoughts, intentions, beliefs, these are all over here. As you see, all our faces are very expressive. At times, my friends tell me my face is very expressive. So at times, it's difficult for me to hide emotions within. But for persons with autism, this becomes a challenge at times to express. It becomes a challenge many a times to understand. I have been like this, and children have come closer to me and said, angry, angry, 11, angry. And then I had to say, no, 11 doesn't always mean angry. I can be upset also. I can be surprised also with an 11 over here. So with this, we start making sketches or based on mostly smiley faces, and on them, we give these marks or impressions where we study the different social punctuation marks on our face. Because difficulty in social communication makes our people so lonely. When they want to go and make friends, at times they can't. Here I see I'm showing you the slide. See, movements have different, these four elements mostly in them: rate, range, force, and direction. The left-sided figure is very commonly seen in persons with autism and also in most groups of developmental disabilities. I want to go and make friendship with someone, but I'm unable to do so. At the moment I go closer, I don't know how much closer to get, and I give a push. When I push this person, the person not only withdraws from me, The entire social situation withdraws from me. The parents of that other child naturally takes this child away. The parents of this child who has pushed the other child immediately either starts scolding or gives a lot of reactions, and by that time, if the parent is already trained, starts ignoring the child. And if there is a lot of commotion, lot of reaction, this child gets motivated to do it again and again. So then it turns into a repetitive behavior because that behavior has been reinforced. But imagine this child who wants to make friends, doesn't know, just because of certain movement paucities, certain challenges in movements, could not do it the proper way. It is as similar as not being able to hold a raw egg in the hand with the proper pressure. Holding a plastic plastic glass or cup in the hand, how much pressure to apply? Is it the same as I do when I hold this glass of stainless steel? Yes, these are worked upon by different interventional methods of occupational therapy, physiotherapy, I agree. But through movements also, at times we do work on such issues. Last but not the least, very important is thinking in dimension. Persons with autism mostly think in 3 dimensions. Now, just a wild guess. I know I won't be able to unmute you, but a wild guess on the picture that we see on this right hand side. Any guess? Because I know what guesses people make. Some say it's a sandwich. Yesterday, one of my medical friends, my colleague, said it's the cross section of lungs, and some also say it's a window. It's a pizza. But the person who had drawn it had told me that it is a samosa cut into half. And why this child had said that? Because this child was very much used to breaking it into half, taking out the masala inside, giving it to the parent, and eating the outer envelope. So, but a child of the same age group wouldn't have drawn a samosa this way, wouldn't have looked inside it, wouldn't have drawn perceptions which have 3 dimensions. Because most of us, when we draw or put it on paper, what we have seen, we mostly do not give 3 dimensional aspects to it very early in age. But people with autism think that way. And the diagram on the left side, which shows those worlds, those were actually certain movements done by us in our DMT class, where children were made to move in those turns, like winding and unwinding were taking place. And then I was asking them to go to a whiteboard and put it on the whiteboard, the movements. And they were trying to simulate it from how they perceive it if they had looked upon it from the top. One of my boys, very bright boy, 16-year-old boy, he suddenly felt, I feel so bad about it. I feel myself like being a snail. I am getting curled up like a snail. I feel so bad. I feel so uncomfortable. To an extent, this boy had a toilet accident in front of everyone. And my poor child, every time he was reading about a tunnel, he was reading about a volcano, he was reading about certain things, he used to internalize it so much so that he used to get some kind of sensory overload, which prompted him to lose even his bladder control. That happens a lot in person with autism. Don't we get affected with the screeching sound of chalk on the chalkboard? Many of us do. But we have self-regulation, and to a point that we can also manage it, but we do have it. For them, it comes across as a very difficult thing, but we can use it properly, that we can use their perceptions in dimensions for their own good. So that is what I mean to say, that there is a pattern. There is a pattern of movements already stored inside our brain. There is a range of spontaneous movements that we want to bring out in them, and it is not that we are achieving something out of it. We are bringing out something already inherent in them, but they are not being able to execute it the way me and you are doing it. So with this, we move towards the end of it. I would just like you to take a look at the structured presentation, that how we have our classes in Samya model of dance and movement therapy, how it is structured sequentially. It adds predictability to their schedule and also flexibility, because some parents are of view that if we make schedule, we cannot at predictability, it is not so, because this predictable nature, at times if I change one card with another one, it makes them more flexible for them, but not all at a time. We encourage both parents to participate, and we also have both parent participation most of the times. If they have fixation on certain objects, we allow that, because that is one of our methodologies. We allow them to be with their objects of comfort. We allow them to be with a bottle of lotion or with a bottle of talcum powder, and keep it maybe in a side bag and move along with that. That helps them to develop trust in us, to feel secured and comfortable. Now, some food for thought, a question. I'm not sure if you would be able to answer this in the chat. Probably you would. And I would take only 2 minutes more. This is a question. And those of you who know the answer, who have heard me before, just keep the answers to yourselves. And those who don't know may reply on the chat that this boy, Rajiv, a very sweet boy with autism, and he has in his life all the people around him in his family who are very caring, because people around a person having autism, they have a different kind of life. And with time, they understand what a blessed life it is to be with someone on the spectrum, realizing the beauty of the spectrum along with the challenges, and the meaning of life changes. So the dad is a very good dad who has actually left, who works, overworks to provide for Rajiv the best interventions. The mother has left job, which many mothers do at times, to provide the best for the child. The sibling is an excellent sibling, excellent sister, a caregiver, full-time caregiver for Rajiv, and a special educator for Rajiv. Who, in your opinion, is doing the most for Rajiv to help him out? So we move on to the next slide. I can't hear you, but I think, well, let me guess, because I can't see the chat box also. Let me guess. Dads get the least vote, but
Hello,
yeah,
Dr. Aditi. I
yeah,
have got
yeah.
answers in my chat box
Okay, that's
from
great.
Rajni Rai saying caregiver, Kaustav Ray saying the answer to be mom,
Okay,
Tahir Abbas saying the answer to be sister, and
okay.
Payal Ghosh saying the answer to be dad.
Okay, so each one of them, mostly, I think one of them, oh, all the caregiver also got it right. Most
Yes.
of the times it happens that the dad gets least number of votes, but dads, please don't get upset about it. It's the way it is. But I always get to see some excellent fathers providing the best for their children. Mothers also don't get maximum points, so there's no point of feeling sad about it. One who gets maximum number of points is the sibling, the sister, and special educator gets a lot of points, and caregivers too. But this is the right answer, that Rajiv here is helping himself the most. Because let's not forget that in the process, the one who's living this challenge, living the disability, yes, let's accept it is a disability because it brings about a lot of challenges, is coping the most and realizing that, okay, I am not what I should be. I'm not what I am expected to be. But trying day and night, we are mere facilitators, facilitating the person, but it is the person himself or herself making the most effort. So I end with this painting, which has been gifted to me. I'm not sure if he's in the audience today. To one of the painters, he's an artist and teaches a lot of special children. He gifted us on one of the annual concert days of Samya, and he created it this way, saying so many hands together, some together joint, and some again spread out with the fingers out, are helping a child to fly. And I said, you didn't know that in the process you had actually made a section of the brain cut this way, where all these hands to me appear like the different nerves, some connected, interconnected, spread out. And if they are aligned properly, because autism is an overall wiring disconnectivity disorder, will definitely help the person to fly. So these hands, like the different nerves and like the hands of all of us, would facilitate a person who's coping day and night to fly high. So thank you very much. With this, I would ask for the questions. So
Yes,
if
Dr.
ready
Aditi,
with the
we have a
questions, yeah.
few questions for you right now.
Okay.
The first question is, what can be some of the interventions for children with autism other than occupational therapy?
The different interventions other
What
than
can,
occupation.
yes,
Uh-huh.
yes.
See, there are different kinds of interventions that are there. What I would say that the common ones which are accepted and approved medically, occupational therapy is certainly one. Many of them having motor issues would require physiotherapy. Speech therapy, of course, if the speech therapist is trained enough to work with persons with autism, because for persons with autism, the speech issues are quite different from other groups of neurodevelopmental delays, but certainly an experienced and knowledgeable speech therapy would be able to address that. Along with that, special education is a must. Every child, no matter how significant are the challenges, I believe should have and must have the right to education. I'm not talking only about academics, but education in any form, and in that special educators can definitely have a big role. Then comes the art-based therapies, among which dance and movement therapy, music therapy, expressive arts therapy, drama therapy, all are there. But the basic ones are the ones which I started with. So those are the interventions absolutely required for a child with autism to start going through.
Okay, ma'am, the next question is that how does a person use DMT when the child has no imitation skills?
Yeah, good, very good question. Now, see, most of the time when we work with, now, at least I would say among the 131 children that are presently in our program, from them, almost 90% never had any imitation skill. So, dance and movement therapy is not a dance class. That is what I started with. It is a facilitative process. So, we assess the child. After a proper dance and movement therapist practitioner who is experienced in the field would assess the child through observation, and then definitely prepare a program for each child, even if it is a group based program. Like our program at Samia is a group based program, and then based on that start working, where we bring about the spontaneous movement of the child, and then start on the corrective procedures, not only correction of movements but also establishing connections in the surroundings, how to adjust the body in space, how to handle issues. There was a child who had significant issues with crowd, used to bite anyone who used to come closer to the child, and the child had a very hard time traveling with his mother through local trains. This child, we subjected him to different groups of movements, and for him, imitation was not the first thing on my mind. But through movement therapy, we worked on those issues, and now this child is able to take a crowd, is able to move through a crowd, go to travel by local train. But then again, if we want to develop imitation skills in a child, that can be worked also. It always depends upon the child, where the child is right now. I would never say ability of the child, because in our program, in my program, I never divide those batches based upon the ability of the child. It is based upon their age, not their ability, because it's the age wise maturity that is considered. And then we gradually work on their spontaneous movements. Remember the slide I showed with the child establishing eye contact? From there we start, and we gradually are able to build up imitation skills in them.
Thank you, doctor. I think after this, we'll just take a few more
Slide I was showing.
questions. And the next question
Sure.
is, if somebody is fond of dancing, but they have very poor gross motor skills and coordination issues, so how do they benefit from such a program?
Yes, many of them do have such issues, coordination issues, deficits in gross and fine motor skills. They also can benefit. Then again, as I said, assessment of every child is very, very important. But I have worked with children. Very recently, I had been even to Bangalore Bubble Center for Autism, where I did a workshop. And then there was a child who could not walk. The child had gross developmental delays and was about 2 years of age, was always seated on the ground, couldn't crawl even. And through dance and movement therapy, I showed them certain movements and exercises, of course, what is within the scope of a workshop. We worked on other abilities of the child. So even if the child, a cerebral palsy child, for example, who has profound motor issues, we can definitely, with music has a very big therapeutic effect. And I said one of the studies that said it also helps in neurogenesis. And many dance movement therapy practitioners, I was fortunate enough and given a chance also to work in ICU on two of patients I remember who were almost in a comatose state. That was, I voluntarily worked there. So I'm just comparing the situations. I'm trying to say, even if anyone does not have an apparently intrinsic movement, we can start facilitated movements with them, maybe prompt based movements with them, hands on movements with them, and gradually, even the flicker of a finger is an achievement for us. And finally, from there, we can achieve. It will take time, but I won't say it won't happen.
Ma'am, the next question is that how do we deal with transition of emotions during therapy session?
Transition of emotions during therapy sessions. This
Child becomes aggressive
mhm.
during the
Okay,
session.
yeah, got your point. That we are facing all the time because our people are at times seemingly angry people. There are a lot of things going around. You know, they are such good-hearted souls. Many a times they become angry if their fair friend is disturbed. It's not angry, they are just upset. They're upset seeing a friend upset sitting next to them. I have a boy who's 16-year-old, and he travels a long distance from Bardhaman with another friend of his and comes to our adult adolescent program. And on one of the days, his friend, who has who is who has more profound challenges, was very upset and was so upset that he had to be given a calmer space to relax. And this other child, he got so upset and angry about it because that was an anxiety that was building in him, that he started behaving in a, I would say, a socially unacceptable way. But then again, we try to realize that, we understand that, and you know what happens is the magic of group acts to play in such circumstances. Their friends in the surrounding, they also learn different coping mechanism. If one of them is upset or at times maybe aggressive, they are given a calmer corner to relax, not taken out of the room. Most of the time we try not to send them back home or taken out of the room unless and until it has turned into a behavior, because the last thing we try is that to turn into an escape behavior. So we allow them to be in the room, maybe at a corner where the person is less susceptible to injuring himself or herself, or less susceptible, less harmful to the neighbor in a burst of anger or emotions. But others learn a lot too. Many a times my kids who are verbal have asked me that why is he angry and banging his head on the wall? And I had to tell them, because you know, you have language, you can voice out your anger. When you are upset, you can tell me, but when she is upset, she cannot say, so she has to show it somehow. But we will help her. So next day in the same class, when someone else had it, I found these very children of mine, they said, oh, that person is upset, let's give him a place to stand, let's all give him some, do you want water, do you want to sit at a corner? And then they would give that place, that person some place. So who says they don't have social understanding? We have to just facilitate social understanding in them. They are better people in understanding their own people than many of us.
Doctor, the last question for the day today is, a lot of parents are raising concerns about their child having the habit of self-biting. So if you can,
Self-biting.
yes,
Self-biting. Okay.
yeah. So if you can suggest some simple movements as to how they can overcome such situations.
See, there are a lot of children who come to us, even adults, and even this is seen in a very phasic way with many of them. And when they get anxious, there are certain pressure points on the hand, I have noticed, that especially on these bony prominences, that they start biting, or they would bite on this aspect of the forearm when they're angry. Or again, if this being upset or disturbed turns into a behavior when they know that if they do it immediately, they will get attention. So as behavioral modification strategies suggest, the first and foremost thing when you see these are appearing is first to ignore it. How to ignore it? Not by, why are you biting? Again you're biting. I won't allow you to do so. Punishing? No. First thing is to move the hand away. move the hand away. Many a time, every time you see the child doing it, parents at times, you know, we, as I'm a parent too, we cannot figure out what is being indifferent. We feel that our very looks, our expressions, make them understand that we are giving them importance. At that time, you have to be very blank in your looks, but move the hand away. But then again, if it keeps coming back, it keeps coming back. There are certain, I don't have a ball right now with me. There are certain, not pressure balls, simple, plastic balls that we get in the market. I don't have one of them now. Sometimes we help them to, it's, I think occupational therapists would also do so, but we do it with music. So with music, we tend to roll them up on their chin many a times over there, because we don't know that why they are biting. Is it a necessity of their gum hypersensitivity which is causing them to bite all the time, or is it is a irritable feeling in the hands which are making them do it? So because we are talking about self biting mostly happens in those areas where, unless they are biting others, so we use those balls a lot of times with music. That also, I think, in the annual concerts program, we will see there is a dance by 4 of them, where one of them is using the ball all over the body, a small size, medium sized ball. And also you can roll that ball up with music on the hands. Yes, there is a session 1 video which I have done with my son during for this lockdown period. There also, I think, we have used the ball all over our body. That has helped to an extent, many of them. So this is one of the movements I can suggest.
Thank you, doctor, for joining us today. It was lovely having you on board. And
Yeah.
and I would now be here for the next 5 to 10 minutes. So if you have any questions, you can address to me in the chat box and I will answer them.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bandyopadhyay. This is Sakhi. Thank
Hi.
you. The session was so informative. I had the opportunity to sit through all of it. It was a wonderful session. I have a lot of parents thanking us for this session. So thank you
Nice to
to
know
Samya
that.
Foundation and to you to have organized this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If there are any more questions, I'll be happy to answer them. If those questions are even mailed to you, I will try to, I might take time, but I will try to help people if they have their questions.
And what's the best way for participants to reach to Samya Foundation? Is it through the social media handles, or is it?
Right now, we still don't have our website ready. It is in progress, but we have a Facebook page and Instagram page. And in all of our videos, mostly at the end, there is the address of Samya Foundation that is given. So, and they are available there. On Facebook, we have a page for Samya Trust. It is written because it's a non-profit charitable trust.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Doctor.
You're welcome. My pleasure. And I wish everyone a very safe lockdown period. We are very hopeful that very soon we all will be out in the sun again. Until then, as I say, you will see in our videos, we mostly practice positive energy by rubbing our hands and then spreading this positive energy all over different parts of our body and also spreading it everywhere. So with a note of that positive energy, I would like to thank you all and spread that message and be very positive with your child. And soon we will be all again out in the world. So let's spread that message of positivity.